God bless you and thank you for joining me. We've had quite a rough week in the world with all kinds of things going on. The wildfires in Australia, the drought in Africa, and more terrorist actions around the world. Of course, terrorists attacked the American embassy in Baghdad, and the terrorists leading that were headed by one of the lead terrorists in the world, Qasem Soleimani. For those who don't know who he is, if you've been listening to me, you would have heard his name several times in the past year. As I pointed out, how he has stood up before assemblies in Iran and prophesied the destruction of the nation of Israel and made that a part of his purpose. He's head of the Quds force. Quds is the word in English Jerusalem. Believe it or not, it's talking about the city of Jerusalem. This is a force that was started as a part of the revolution in Iran in 1979, with the purpose of liberating all Muslim lands, including Jerusalem. In other words, they believe that the land which is occupied right now by the state of Israel really should belong to a Muslim caliphate or Muslim countries, and there should be no Jews in it at all. This is not an objective to make peace with a Jewish state, but to ignore the existence of that Jewish state and eventually bomb them out of existence. Now, if you don't believe me, all you have to do is go back and read his speeches, read what he says, and what the Quds Force has been charged with doing ever since. They have surrounded Israel with various terror groups that they support, including Hamas and Hezbollah and others, all with the purpose of eliminating the state of Israel. So while there are people like Michael Moore who don't seem to know who he is or who he was, others have been noticing his reign of terror for years and have been reacting differently. The leftist media here seems to be wondering why we would want to kill this terrorist that was wandering around in Iraq, a nation we supposedly had freed from that, and exerting his authority there and being part of planning and leading an attack on an American embassy. So they don't know who he is, why he would be there doing such a thing, yet it's been quite evident for years. He has already been responsible for killing hundreds of Americans, wounding many more, and killing literally thousands. He was at the head of, when the protests were going on in Iran not too long ago, of assuring that many of Iran's own civilians were murdered as a part of those protests. That's the way they quell those kind of uprisings in Iran. You just kill the people that do it. So, Julian Reichelt is the editor-in-chief of the best-selling German newspaper Bild. On Friday, he authored what the Jerusalem Post called a barn-burning commentary praising U.S. President Donald Trump for authorizing a military strike to eliminate Soleimani. Here's what that editor said, quote, "President Trump has freed the world of a monster whose aim in life was an atomic cloud over Tel Aviv. Trump has acted in self-defense, the self-defense of the U.S. and all peace-loving people," wrote Reichelt. He added that the Iranian terror godfather Qasem Soleimani stood for a world that no peace-loving person can want, a world in which can be torn apart by a bomb at any time because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. The commentary singled out Soleimani's scorched earth campaign in the Syrian war, a world in which entire cities are wiped out, like Aleppo, in which bloodthirsty militia go from door to door and execute civilians. Reichelt noted that the potential of Iran's regime to carry out terrorism in Germany and Israel, in which the kindergartens in Germany could burn up in fireballs at any time because its children are Jewish, in which Israel is under threat of extinction every day. Now, the title of Reichelt's commentary was, quote, "Trump has freed the world from a monster," end quote. The Jerusalem Post article goes on to say the U.S. Pentagon said it took preventive military action against Soleimani because he planned attacks against American diplomats. According to the State Department, he oversaw terrorist operations that were, quote, responsible for the deaths of at least 603 American service members in Iraq. The U.S. ambassador to Germany, of course, wrote on Twitter that, quote, as a diplomat, I believe there isn't enough media attention on the fact that General Soleimani was planning to attack U.S. diplomats. And the attack did what? It saved lives. It saved lives. Does it mean that Iran will not react? They have decided they will. Of course, they said they would. After 3 days of mourning, the Ayatollah has said we are going to call for attacks on some 35 different targets around the world in response to this. There are those on the left saying, oh, Donald Trump is getting us into a war. Friends, the war has been going on for a long time. Wake up and smell the coffee. Notice that it's been happening. Thousands upon thousands have died already. And as we allow the terrorists to keep doing what they're doing, more will die. Someone has to stand up and stop it. Will it cause ultimately a larger war? Maybe. In fact, unfortunately, the Bible tells us that as long as evil reigns, that there will be wars, and rumors of wars only stopped by the coming of the Prince of Peace, the Lord Jesus himself. Well, as Soleimani was a part of this coalition to try to eliminate Israel, this is nothing new. Since 1979, when the Islamic State was started in Iran, they have been at this for some time. And it's amazing that Psalm 83 gives us a little bit of a list of these enemies. And in a psalm that's subtitled in my Bible, Prayer Against Enemies, we see a plea for God to eliminate these terrorists. Let's read it in verse 1. God, do not keep silent. Do not be deaf. Do not be idle. See how your enemies make an uproar. Those who hate you have acted arrogantly. They devise clever schemes against your people. They conspire against your treasured ones. They say, come, let us wipe them out as a nation so that Israel's name will no longer be remembered. That is, by the way, literally, as I stop and comment on verse 4, that is literally the same statement, versions of the same statement made in front of the Iranians parliament by these same terrorists, by Soleimani himself. Let's wipe Israel out, not make peace with Israel. Let's wipe them out from the face of the earth. So, verse 5, for they have conspired with one mind. They form an alliance against you. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon and Amalek, Philistia and the inhabitants of Tyre. Even Assyria has joined them. They lend support to the sons of Lot. Now, it is interesting that you've got a list in Psalm 83, thousands of years old, that is noted by several commentators even today. The late J.R. Church, in talking about this passage, says this: Jordan is described by the ancient tribes listed in these verses: Edom, Moab, and Ammon. The Ishmaelites, children of Ishmael, make up the bulk of the modern Arab world. The Hagarenes were the children of Hagar. Gebal was a city on the Mediterranean about 25 miles north of Beirut. In Greek and Roman times, it was actually called Byblos because of the manufacture of papyrus there. Today, the city is called Jabil. It was listed along with Tyre in Lebanon. The Philistines, or Palestinians, are also listed. Also, there is some evidence that among the Palestinians are descendants of ancient Edom, Amalek, and Ashur, and also have offspring among the Arabs today. Incredible, but there it is. It seems that a 3,000-year-old description of Israel's modern enemies, along with their attempt to destroy God's chosen people, is listed right here in Psalm 83. He goes back and talks about events of 1982 and 83 that seem to parallel some of these things that are happening in Psalms 82 and 83. It's something that we have to recognize is the struggle that will continue to go on, and you can have one of two attitudes toward it. You can bury your head in the sand, pretend as if it's going going on somewhere that will never touch you or that has nothing to do with you, or you can recognize that good must fight evil lest evil win. Verse number 9. Deal with them, again we're back in Psalm 83, deal with them as you did with Midian, as you did with Sisera and Jabin at the Kishon River. They were destroyed at Endor. They became manure for the ground. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, and all their tribal leaders like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, let us seize God's pastures for ourselves. Make them like tumbleweed, my God, like straw before the wind. As fire burns a forest, as a flame blazes through mountains, so pursue them with your tempest and terrify them with your storm. Cover their faces with shame so that they will seek your name, Yahweh. Let them be put to shame and terrified forever. Let them perish in disgrace. May they know that you alone, whose name is Yahweh, are the most high over all the earth. Now, folks, this is a very straightforward prayer. A prayer that says, God, these are the people rising up against your nation, against Israel, to destroy it. Destroy them. It's a call for a war. Some folks say, well, you can't really do things like that. You can't fight. You can't kill other people in the name of God. How terrible that would be. So if you take that attitude, it's just like those who were pacifists prior to World War II and almost let Hitler take over the world. Hitler and Mussolini and the fascists were willing to go as far as we would let them. And until good people rose up and were willing to fight the evil, they were victorious. Friends, you've got to realize you can't sleep against the wickedness of the world. You can't just cover your eyes and pretend it does not happen. Good people must act. And as we continue to act, they will react. But it's not as if it was not already going on. Folks are trying to blame our president for starting a war. Friends, who's putting the blame where it's due? At the feet of the leaders of Iran. Who is saying, hey, Iran, you're starting a war. You've been working on this for years, and you make no bones about it. You funded terrorists and military operations all over the Middle East. You've even claimed that you can strike America itself. And our acts of appeasement have not helped. In the previous administration, when we decided we would just lift all sanctions against Iran, we would load a plane full of money and send it to Iran, they were still chanting in the streets, death to America. They were chanting in the streets, death to America, this week as well. But guess what? There were other people. Now check this out. You can find several articles on the internet about it. You can find it on the Blaze and several other places. There were other Iranians, the ones who've been trying to get out from under the oppression of these wicked ayatollahs, who had parties. During the 3 days of mourning, they had 3 days of celebrations. They were baking cakes and desserts in honor of the fact that this wicked terrorist was now dead, the one who had threatened their lives. Says something, doesn't it? I hope you aren't so ignorant to just believe whatever comes across on the front line of some media outlets and then walk away not knowing the truth. Understand that this is a real struggle, and it's a struggle that God predicted would happen and would be going on. It's the struggle that will be taking place and interrupted by the second coming of Jesus Christ. That's what we're looking forward to. I hope you will have a great day in the Lord by celebrating the fact that good people can continue to fight evil until Jesus comes. And then when He does, we'll finally have peace. Well, God bless you. We'll wake up in the Word again right here tomorrow.